Look, I get it, we just had Championship Sunday and now you're looking at the calendar and there's 2 whole weeks until the Super Bowl. But while you've been watching football, a wild and exciting college basketball season has been unfolding. So consider this your guide to catch you up on what you've missed in college basketball. The Big 12 has been the most dominant conference in college basketball this season by a decent margin. The defending champs, the Kansas Jayhawks, are right in the mix again, and although they had a 3-game losing streak this season, they have an exceptional mix of both veteran and freshman talent. Their rivals, Kansas State, took down the Jayhawks in an overtime thriller from Manhattan, and they've also had a tremendous season. Iowa State is currently tied for the conference lead, as are the Texas Longhorns, despite mid-season coaching controversy, and the Baylor Bears and TCU Horned Frogs are also right in the mix. The 9 toughest remaining schedules all belong to the Big 12. We just had the Big 12 SEC Challenge, which the Big 12 won pretty handily 7-3, including Oklahoma, a team that is currently outside of the field of 68, beating Alabama by 24. It likely means that from here on out, the Big 12 will continue to beat itself up a bit and may miss out on a 1 seed, but the 6 teams I just listed are all 4 seeds or better in our most recent bracketology, so don't be surprised if the Big 12 does some major damage once March Madness rolls around. So yes, the Big 12 has been great, but some of the traditional Blue Bloods have had pretty mediocre or disappointing seasons. After reaching the Final Four, Duke has taken a somewhat predictable step back in the first season since Coach K's retirement, especially considering 5 players were drafted from last year's team, including the potential Rookie of the Year, Paolo Banchero. But it's still weird to see Duke in 7th place in the ACC. However, the Duke coaching transition has gone significantly better than Villanova's. Jay Wright retired at the end of last season, and the Wildcats are currently sitting under 500. I'm assuming that record's an anomaly, but Villanova won't be in this year's tournament unless they win the Big East tournament. It's also been a bit of a bumpy season for Kentucky. After getting upset at the hands of the St. Peter's Peacocks in last year's tournament, the Wildcats have already suffered 7 losses and are currently in the 8 seed range if the season ended today, although a recent 4-game win streak might have saved their March Madness hopes. Star big man Oscar Tshiebwe did return for Kentucky this season and is averaging nearly 17 points and 14 rebounds per game this season. The problem is that the Wildcats haven't been able to surround him with consistent shooting, so the jury is still out on if Kentucky will be able to make a run in this year's tournament. After being the consensus preseason number 1 and reaching the national championship game last season, North Carolina hasn't lived up to that billing. Like Kentucky, their star big man returned in Armando Bacot, and there are other key pieces of the roster, including Caleb Love and Leaky Black. The Tar Heels have won 6 of their last 7, however, so perhaps North Carolina is finally kicking it into gear. Even Gonzaga isn't their usual number 1 seed selves, even though All-American Drew Timme is back for the Bulldogs, although they do currently have the nation's best scoring offense. Speaking of returning players, Purdue currently sits at number 1 in the AP poll, and that is largely thanks to the play of Zach Edey. The 7'4" center is averaging 22 points, 13 rebounds, and 2 blocks, and the Boilermakers' lone loss of the season is a 1-point loss to Rutgers. Edey is the odds-on favorite to win the Naismith Award given to the most outstanding player in college basketball, and he is certainly deserving. He wants more than just regular season awards. He'll be looking to guide Purdue to their first Final Four since 1980. I mentioned that the defending champs have an intriguing balance of young talent and veteran stars. Grady Dick is a sharp-shooting athletic freshman, but the veteran and leading scorer is junior Jaren Wilson. He's averaging 21 points per game, which is the 11th best mark in all of college basketball, and he also grabs an average of 8.6 rebounds this season as well. He has great length and exceptional agility for his size at 6'8", and he shoots the ball well enough from deep to keep defenses honest. His scoring has jumped up from 11 points last season to 21, and when Kansas needs a bucket, they often turn to Wilson. He dropped 38 against Kansas State earlier this year, and he plays nearly every minute for Bill Self. If the Jayhawks make another deep run in March Madness, don't be surprised to see Wilson leading the way. As I'm recording this video, Alabama is one of a very few teams in the country who are undefeated in conference play. The Crimson Tide have a real shot at claiming a 1 seed in the tournament, and they have freshman sensation Brandon Miller to thank for some of that success. Miller is almost a guaranteed lottery pick, and for good reason. He's very quick and athletic at 6'9" and can give bigger defenders fits. But if you put a smaller defender on him, he'll look to crash the rim, or he'll simply shoot right over the defense, since he is currently shooting 44.5% from deep. The Houston Cougars entered the season as a top 5 team in the preseason, and they've lived up to that ranking, briefly holding the top spot, in the AP poll. The Cougars hang their hat on defense, and veteran guard Marcus Sasser leads that stingy defense. Sasser averages a team-best 1.8 steals and also paces Houston in scoring with 16.2 points per game. He doesn't always shoot very efficiently, but on the other hand, he is also capable of getting hot in a hurry from beyond the arc, having made 3 or more threes in 10 of the 22 games so far this season. He's played 93 games in his career with Houston and is well familiar with Kelvin Sampson's system and provides great leadership. A 1 seed is absolutely in reach for this Cougars team, and their defense makes them a threat in any game that they will play, especially in March. He may not play for a big-name school, but Detroit Mercy's Antoine Davis is simply a pure scorer. He has 100 more points than anyone in college basketball this season, and he recently broke the NCAA record for most threes made in a career after dropping 11 three-pointers and 41 points in a win against Robert Morris. He's second in all-time scoring behind only Pistol Pete Maravich. He'd have to average over 30 points per game to catch Pistol Pete, or go on a long run in the Horizon League tournament and probably into the NCAA tournament as well, but given Davis's scoring ability, you never know. It's worth pointing out that Davis is accomplishing all of this in his 5th season, given the COVID extra year of eligibility, but that doesn't take away the fact that he's one of college basketball's greatest scorers, and he's largely been operating under the radar his entire career. So all of these top teams and players are great, but you know how March Madness works. There's upsets, there's Cinderellas, so here's some teams that may very well bust your bracket in March. Charleston just saw their 20-game win streak come to an end, but the Cougars are the real deal. They have 5 players averaging double digits in scoring, and they look to push the pace whenever possible, and they take a ton of threes. That kind of offense means that any player can really carry the scoring load, and it's difficult for opposing defenses to key in on any one player. They spread shooters around the floor and grab a lot of offensive rebounds, leading to even more possessions. A team that is able to run the Cougars off the three-point line and slow down the tempo of the game might find success, but any team that matches up with Charleston in March is gonna have their hands full. Florida Atlantic moved all the way up to number 19 in the most recent AP poll and are in the midst of a 20-game win streak of their own. Like the Cougars, the Owls also have balanced scoring, with 5 scorers averaging 9 points per game or better. Also like Charleston, Florida Atlantic loves the three, and they actually shoot it quite a bit better than the Cougars do. John L. Davis is the team's leading scorer, and he has been a defensive menace in his last few games. The Owls are going to live or die by the three when it comes to March Madness. If they're hitting, it might mean that Florida Atlantic makes it to the Sweet 16, or maybe even better. Just ask Ohio State fans how they feel about Oral Roberts. The Golden Eagles are back, and so is their star Max Abmas, who is averaging over 22 points per game. Abmas has solid talent around him, and the Golden Eagles are a top 10 scoring offense in the country. Oral Roberts is simply dangerous, not only because they've had success in the tournament in the past, but because they've got a roster full of players who aren't afraid to shoot the three. 7'5" Connor Vanover is having his best season by a wide margin and is one of college basketball's premier rim defenders, averaging 3.3 blocks per game, which is second in the nation. Trust me, you do not want to see Oral Roberts in the tournament. Kent State has had a great season, and prior to an off night and a defeat against Northern Illinois, their previous loss had come at the hands of Charleston, Houston, and Gonzaga by a combined 14 points. They play a ferocious style of defense, forcing a bevy of turnovers from opponents, led by Malik Jacobs and his 2.9 steals per game, and the returning MAC Player of the Year, Sincere Carey, averages 17 points per game and pretty much has unlimited range. If the Golden Flashes don't match up with a team that has a premier big man like Purdue, Kentucky, or Gonzaga in the first round, I truly believe this Kent State team is capable of a Sweet 16 run, as long as they handle business and actually win the MAC tournament. There's obviously a lot more I could say about this college basketball season, and I'm sure there's a lot of teams and players that I missed. I mean, for example, Northwestern is currently in second place in the Big Ten. It's been kind of a wacky year. But hopefully this is a good preview to get your college basketball watching underway if you haven't done that already. And if you haven't done it already, hit that subscribe button down below. See ya.